Welcome everyone. Today is a really special day. I'm very excited to showcase Pamela Sneed for you all. And then we'll roll into a town hall after we get a dose of her amazing poetry and hear a little bit about Funeral Diva. So without further ado, Shannon.
Hi, it is my great pleasure to introduce Pamela Sneed to everyone here today. If you are not familiar, she is a New York-based poet, writer, professor, performance artist, critic, mentor, who's been widely recognized, celebrated, and anthologized. In addition to possessing a million-watt smile, she also boasts an impressive roster of publications, including multiple collections of poetry, literary nonfiction, chapbooks. She has given performances and lectures at esteemed museums and theaters and universities that most of us would only dream of. And her most recent work, Funeral Diva, collects personal essays and poems into a really riveting account of her coming of age in New York City at the height of the AIDS epidemic and its impact on Black queer life. Fellow artist and activist Avram Finkelstein says, if you wonder what political agency feels like, read this book. If you want to know what a broken heart feels like, read this book. If you're not sure how to express political agency in spite of a broken heart, which I think all of us can relate to, read this book. Please welcome Pamela Sneed.
Hey everybody, thank you for having me and having me here to talk about my book. And yeah, that was a great introduction. I like the million-watt smile. And yeah, I just delivered the commencement speech at SAIC for the low residency program last week, and that was like my first commencement speech. So you sort of like, you know, covered a little bit of what I was going to say before I read poetry, because I was going to read what has been written about me. And so Claudia Rankine's blurb is Pamela Sneed's Funeral Diva charts the grieving patterns informing a life with unflinching honesty and clarity. This notable achievement, traveling from youth to adulthood, is a harrowing account of how Sneed transforms violence and pain into an artist's life. And that's Claudia Rankine, author of Citizen and American Lyric. Hilton All said she is a writer for the future in that she defies genre. And Karen Finley says, Funeral Diva is urgent and necessary reading to live by. This is writing at its finest. Sneed poetically processes individuation, life's journey of becoming, a visionary elegy that transforms trauma and abandonment to recognition and virtuosity. Here, with perceptive awareness, we are invited along the way with mysterious encounters, beloved attachments, and then the cruelties, the sorrows, and profane acts of injustices confronted and giving Cassandra full due diligence. Sneed magnificently refuses to back down and gives courageous and compassionate requiem with imagination, integrity, and inspiration for humanity. Keep this book close to your heart and soul. Yay! And so basically it's a memoir in hybrid form, so it's poetry and prose, and basically written at various points of my life. One of the main priorities was to document the AIDS era for Black lesbians and gays in about like the late 80s, early 90s. A lot of whom were my friends. I lost one of my closest friends to AIDS. And I feel that, you know, people of color, you know, writers who died of AIDS, it hasn't been documented well, and nor the women, the queer women like, you know, Audre Lorde and Pat Parker and June Jordan, who died of cancer. And so the late 80s, early 90s was a really incredible time in New York City, and like a lot of young Black queer people had come here from the suburbs, and basically they were forming kind of like a literary movement. And then at the same time, and they were sort of like, you know, urged on by James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. And here was this, you know, community coming into an identity and then being decimated like right at the same time. And so that's the era that I came out of. And so my commitment has always been through the years to try to document that community and its impact on me and being a part of. And then, you know, it's political. So I'm very much interested in social justice. And I'm going to read a few poems. So I had just begun to relax, celebrate the marriage equality ruling. I had just begun feeling with Obama. I was watching Ali in trouble, off the ropes, delivering to his opponents the rope-a-dope, my father's eyes, excitement. I was just beginning to breathe air, feel exhilarated at images of Joe Biden and President Obama running down the halls of the White House with rainbow flags, like boys with kites soaring. I was just beginning to forgive deaths of my brothers to AIDS, not forget. There should still be tribunals for them and every woman abused by the medical system. I had just begun to turn a corner on Mike Brown, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, the massacre at AME, not think of it all every day. And then the police killed this young Black girl in Texas, claimed she committed suicide. And I remember we're a war nation in war times. I imagine how James Bayard Nina felt, seeing a nation turn its dogs, teeth, gas, hoses, bullets on children, adults, humans. I can't stop thinking about Steve Biko, his battered face. They say he hung himself too, the world's outrage. Who will pray now for us? America. All rage aside, I gotta hand it to the Trump administration because they have really managed to stage the greatest heist in show on earth. Like the old Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey Circus used to boast trapeze and live animal acts before animal rights activists shut them down. I mean, this is like the heists in Oceans 11, 12, and 13. I could never watch because they seem so contrived. Yes, they have delivered something so spectacular, it's better than anything Karl Rove could have dreamt of. This even outdoes the architects of apartheid who turned the entire country of South Africa into a jail for Black people. All I can think of is the movie Gladiator, where Joaquin Phoenix plays a corrupt emperor with no experience who achieved power illicitly. When asked how he'd rule over the people, he said, give them games. And every day, slaves fill an arena to fight. This is some high-wired, sawed-off lady shit. This is some Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil and the bureaucratization of homicide shit, where the Holocaust was hidden in paperwork, menial tasks everyone had a hand in, so no one saw the whole picture. I mean, this is some sci-fi Octavia Butler and the Hunger Games shit. I mean, nodding to Jane Cortez's poem describing the rape of Joanne Little, asking just what the fuck was she supposed to do? Tongue his encrusted toilet stool lips, suck the numbers off his tin badge, choke on his claptrap balls, scrub the nub of his rotten maggots, sing God Bless America, thank you for fucking my life away. This is some scrambling around, too many balls in air, can't keep track shit. More buttons pushed than when trapped in an elevator, panic, some through the roof rating shit, record-breaking roof shit. For pleasure, I watched the sci-fi spoof Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Netflix, an agency of superheroes seeking justice. One of the characters said, like the real-life Mark Zuckerberg, we no longer have to surveil people because they offer up their information here for free. When alone, just to myself, I secretly call Facebook Racebook. Can't say it out loud because, you know, people steal. One of my friends, an older white woman who took the hit for Abby Hoffman, she went to prison. She said everything there is racialized. They play movies constantly that will divide and create groups. That's what happens on Facebook. We're constantly fed race stories, whipped up into frenzies. It's like the Civil War every day. This is some deep shit. Talking to one of my students and they said, oh, Trump's so stupid. I started to yell, that's what they want us to believe. He's playing a character in a soap opera and we experience him as a character we know. Years ago, I was asked to join a panel for an academic discussion on Beyonce. I asked that we not consider her as a personality, but as a business, like marketing, like a marketing machine. Every time Hollywood celebrity wants to sell something these days, they say something shocking with regard to race and gender. Singer John Mayer referred to his dick publicly as a white supremacist. The Seinfeld guy who was filmed in a club responding to a black heckler and said something like, "You're lucky you're not hanging from a tree with a fork up your ass." The Seinfeld box set was released the next day and sold millions of copies. The day before Madonna's album dropped, she took to Twitter, referred to her black son as "my nigga." It's all a strategy, like when Jay and Bey sampled the lines, what is it? Describing an infamous beating of Tina Turner by Ike on their album. They said, "Eat the cake, anime," referring to when Ike brutally shoved food into Tina's mouth. From the beginning, you could tell Trump was running on a racist platform during the debates. Everyone in his family, except Melania, dyed their hair platinum blonde, and he made Hitler-esque signals to depict the Aryan race. On the panel where I posited Bey and our reaction to her as a business and a result of clever marketing, there was a great uproar and pushback by Black women soon to graduate. "I don't care if you like me," I said, "but you've got to have an analysis." And I think I'll read one more. The headline in yesterday's news blared, "A tale of two pandemics. Shocking inequities in the healthcare system." What got me was the use of shocking and two. Those of us who lived through the 1980s, early 90s AIDS crisis already knew about the existence of two New Yorks, two 20, 30, 40, 50 Americas, maybe more, depending on age, race, class, citizenship status. Entirely different systems for those who aren't white, straight, middle class. Those of us who saw our brothers, friends, sisters die at the hands of a system that shunned, refused to treat, threw away the unwanted. Still can't forget a gay friend waiting for Medicaid to treat HIV. He got sicker and sicker. I asked why Medicaid took so long. He said they're waiting to see if I'll die first. This wasn't the America that I learned about in elementary school. I was instructed to put my hand over my heart and salute. This wasn't the free America we sang of. People who are LGBTQIA already know that there are two Americas. A doctor who kept forcing me to take a pregnancy test, even after I insisted at the time I only have sex with women. I saw his scorn, still a test he may be paid for. And those women who were forcibly sterilized, had wombs, their life force taken, left dry, barren by doctors who never even stopped to explain, felt entitled to take, scar women's bodies, breasts cut off, no options or consolation given. Women who aren't rich and white already know invisible lines you can't cross, with no insurance or Medicaid, forced into black markets for drugs, a land of botched care, botched procedures. Black people already know separate doors, separate entrances, treatments, options, existing long after Jim Crow. And I have kept waiting for this moment. This time of a medical Me Too, when those who suffered from botched procedures and the indignities step out from their shadows, speak, and name the atrocities committed, medical malpractice. I won't blame all doctors, some are good, just middlemen like so many in a broken system doing what they can. And I'm grateful for the good ones in this pandemic risking their own lives. But the image of medical researchers that we see in movies and on television who understand a complex problem, pour through medical books and science, journals, stay up all night, burning midnight oil to find a cure, who weep with concern, are mostly false, like the ones who find cures and refuse to patent or personally profit. Those days have become a myth. What's replaced them are businessmen wanting status amongst peers, entry to country clubs and power, gaslighters, hustlers, actors like Trump. There's a doctor at Mount Sinai, star of his field, charged with drugging and raping his patients. No one believed it until it was proven. His victims were only Black women. The rest he left alone. And do I have time to read one more, or? Should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay. Let's see here. I watched Black Panther, and all I could think of was, oh no. Giving permission for a group of Black Americans to visit Ghana and West Africa, saying things like, I'm home, and giving the Wakanda salute, since Africa was presented as so easy, bite-sized, McNugget, friendly, Lion King chunks. Some Africans would welcome them, but others would laugh. Big, lumbering, dumb Americans, like those speaking English loud in foreign places, swimming naked in religious communities because the world is their oyster. I was embarrassed by it, humbly asking someone to pardon our privilege or naivete. It's not our fault we were brainwashed and estranged. I felt protective too, remembering my trip to Ghana, the castle, sitting at the edge of the ocean, bathing, where the ships once loaded, walking through dungeons of unspeakable horror, slaves standing knee-deep in feces and urine, fishing food from waste. I wanted to protect what I saw there, not wanting loud Black American tourists with their souls walking all over the ground. At the Slavery Museum in Portugal, the guard explained to me, most people don't even know what this is. Even after we explain, he said, Black Americans are the worst, come straight from the ocean, won't wipe their dirty feet, ask where the whips and chains are because they only want gore. I want to say that there are some things the movie did well. I held back tears when I saw the cloth. The kente brought back memories of my ancestral journey, the longing for home. When the young man travels through a portal to the ancestral realm, there was beauty. I also knew the storyline well, the lost orphaned African American returning to Africa. It was my MFA thesis work inspired by my trip to Ghana. And actually, the scholarship didn't entirely belong to Ta-Nehisi Coates. It was Sadia Hartman who wrote the book, Lose Your Mother. I was shocked that a superhero film would attempt such depth of subject, but it quickly turned into using Africa as a backdrop for African American identity issues. I was offended too. All I could think of was Sophia Bakari, a Black Panther and political prisoner, dead at 53. And what was done to Fred Hampton and Huey Newton. I wanted to scream at the film, this isn't a revolution. They said with all the merchandising, it made billions. A cartoon while our education, healthcare, neighborhoods are still lacking. I thought other things too about how it descended haplessly into Black on Black war. And the CIA agent is a good guy. And the female Black action figures hadn't been seen on screen for 40 years since the days of Blaxploitation. And in the same literature, 30 years between a prominent political artist lesbian like Audre Lorde. So actually, where's the progress? Thank you.
Oh my God. Thank you. Like I have permanent goosebumps.
Oh, good.
If anyone has any questions, we can go into some questions. When is the pub date?
October 20th, 2020.
Pamela, I was wondering about your writing process. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, that's like kind of like broad. I mean, are you talking about like my practice? Like when do I write?
Yeah.
I don't, I really like, I'm probably non-traditional. I mean, I write all the time, but I kind of, like, I've been doing a lot of visual art. I did the cover, and I feel like one of the things that I teach is that we're always writing. So like when I'm walking, when I'm making something visual, like I'm always processing, you know what I mean? So I feel like I'm always shaping something. And so when I get to the page, it's probably like, it's already like pretty much itself because so much has already been worked through, But I find with the process, so poetry is free form whenever I want to, and that's pretty often like what it was that I did for the first time the April 30-30, so 30 poems over 30 days. and I had a partner, and I thought that that was like fantastic. Like it actually, I mean, I always resisted that kind of work, but then it like just forces you to like kind of put up, shut up, you know, you got to make it happen. And a lot of work came out of that. So I find like I'll recommend that now to any writer, you know, to you know, do a 30-day, you know, poetry thing, and then like a poem a day, no matter what, you know, and then take the next month off and then do another, you know, round. But like with prose, I find like you have to be on a schedule, because prose happens, you know, you have to write through prose, you know what I mean, in order to get to the next, you know, level. So it's like poetry, I think, you know, free form, but prose, you have to get on a schedule, you know, so it depends. So if I'm writing prose, it's like at minimum an hour, you know, it could go, you know, 3 to 4. Yeah. Yeah.
Pamela, can you talk about the title of the book?
Oh yeah, so Funeral Diva, I mean, it's kind of like wry and ironic. It's about basically going to a lot of funerals during, you know, the you know, height of the AIDS crisis in the late 80s, early 90s, really in the early 90s. And I was kind of like a very visible spokesperson, and I was like always being called to kind of memorialize, you know, people I didn't even know, you know, that well. You know, I was asked to give a poem or speech or something. And so it was just this process of like, and I would wear all these different outfits depending on who it was, you know, and like for Craig Harris, who was really flamboyant, I wore this like really big hat. And then one of the things that I say, you know, in the book is that, you know, but it's not about the costumes that I wore. It's not about, you know, all of those things. It's really about having lost like one of my closest friends, like all of the loss that, you know. So, and in a way, I'm kind of like, I'm making, you know, a wry sort of like, it's not a joke, but, you know, I'm being facetious about something that's, you know, very difficult. You know? And I mean, there's something that I'm noticing too. I don't know, like that's happening now in the culture, that it seems like we're going all out on funerals. Like, you know, like it's just like the John Lewis funeral. There was like the Aretha Franklin funeral. There was Whitney Houston's funeral, and like all these funerals of these like incredible like events, you know. And I'm like, I don't know, there's something in this whole this process of making funerals, you know what I mean? And so our funerals are becoming greater than all of our other events. And I'm sort of wondering about that. I have to think about it more, but I know it's like I was like watching, you know, John Lewis's funeral a little bit, and I was like sobbing, you know, and it's like but it's interesting. They're making these television, you know, shows literally out of like funerals. And so I'm wondering about that as a culture, you know, where we're at. So anyway, so, you know, mine was specifically about the AIDS era, in like grief and the process of going to so many funerals. But I mean, I guess it speaks to this time as well, you know, with COVID. And then also, you know, like America in itself, I guess, going through a deep period of transition and loss on a lot of levels, you know.
A lot of what we're going through with COVID has brought back a lot of the memories of living through the AIDS crisis.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It brings it back, but in a way, you know, what I was saying to someone is that for me, I just feel more prepared. You know what I mean? Like not, because it wasn't similar in the sense of, you know, the response. There was, even though the government has been completely negligent in this, still there was a little bit more care given initially, because straight people were involved, you know. Yeah, so it was like, it was a little bit different, but like the kind of ostracism that happened because of AIDS. You know, there was just nothing like it. I mean, it was like, well, it was an extermination in a way. And like, I feel that about COVID, like it's turning into that too, you know, with all the negligence. And it's like, I hate to use that kind of word, but then, you know, like some of the Republican senators are saying stuff like that. Well, we'll get rid of, you know, some of the like elderly or whatever, because it'll take up more benefits. I mean, they're saying this like openly. So, so it is that, you know. Yeah.
I'm officially whelmed. I wanted to like go sit with my thoughts and pick up my paintbrush.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's difficult to like kind of like name it, and then I get you know, I'm reticent about like, you know, just saying what it is. And then, you know, like Billy Porter, you know, just said, you know, this is a genocide. And so it's like, oh, okay, you know, I don't feel so bad like saying it.
No, particularly when you look at what's happening with the underserved communities.
Right.
And I think that's the part that loops me back into the AIDS, where like it was okay for the gays to die.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And now evidently we can throw minorities and elderly into that pile.
Right. So sad. Yeah, it's really, really, you know, but yeah, like, I guess for me, like having lived through that era, like nothing surprises me anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I say in the tale of two pandemics, you know, people are like going, shocking inequities in the healthcare system. And it's like, where have you been? You know, we knew this, you know. You know, and still have failed to fix that system, you know, which is irreparably broken. But basically, Sekou Sundiata used to say, you know, June Jordan was bisexual. And like, he was so, you know, thrilled to like know a bisexual writer. But anyway, I think she was like the first like poet, you know, that I ever saw like at the New School. And, you know, and she said, you know, this country needs a revolution. And so, I mean, it was like really profound because she didn't say it like, it wasn't like a big deal. She said it like very matter of fact, you know, but she actually, I had like one of my first girlfriends, and she like really liked my girlfriend, and she kept like, you know, kind of trying to talk to her and ignore me, you know. So then, so I never forgot that. So then when I met her with Toni Morrison, I totally tried to ignore her, right? And I was like, I really like your work, Miss Morrison, you know, and I like ignore June Jordan. And it's pretty funny, you know, but you know, again, as I say in history, you know, if I could go back and tell her now, you know, like what her work really meant to me, you know. Yeah, but you know, it's like you're young, you know, and you're just sort of like, hey, how dare you, you know, blah, 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 you know? Yeah. Yeah, not with, you know, all the writers, like not without their issues. I mean, everybody's got like, you know, some story or something, you know, funny stuff.
Let's do that round of applause again, because it is well earned.
Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Stacey.
All right.
Thank you, Elaine.